As Celtic fans, we always go into the summer transfer window full of optimism. And that optimism generally comes by noises that come out of the club towards the end of the previous season, just around about the time that season tickets are probably going to get sold and the club wants you to part with its cash. Then, only weeks after it, they tend to release a strip or two. Now, up until this moment, we've released 3 strips already. We've released an away strip. We've released a Christmas tops, a Christmas top strip, and we've released a new home top. When it comes to Celtic transfers, well, it's like waiting on the Easter Bunny, make-believe thing that never exists. It's a bit like Santa Claus, he's not real. It's a bit like Celtic transfers. You wait on them and 2 goalkeepers come along at once. But let's look at the actual timeline of some of the Celtic headlines over the past month or so. Now, it was only on the very first day of July. Now, today is the 25th of July. And on the 1st of July, Celtic were linked with a defender. Now, we all know that we need a better defender than Liam Scales. We could do with someone that's top quality along with Cameron Carter-Vickers. And it was suggested that Celtic were going to spend around about $7 million on Darren O'Shea from Burnley. And it said that he was our number one target and that they shelled out $7 million for O'Shea from West Brom just a year before. So it would take a significant offer for Celtic to get the player. But then again, we had Gustav Lagerbielke, and he was told that he was going to go in the winter window. He didn't, because we needed a defender due to the fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers got injured again. But the interesting thing for this transfer window, and I'm going to let you listen to Brendan Rodgers and what Brendan Rodgers said 2 weeks before we went to America. We've now played a few games in America. We've got one left. And it's just basically a recap of where we are and where we thought we were going to be this transfer window. Now, we played the first game against DC United. And we played Bain in goals. We went to America with Bain. And we thought, my God, we're going to start the season with Bain. But fortunately enough for Celtic, they managed to get Sinisalo in the door just before that game happened. So we did start that game with Bain, Donovan, Welsh, Scales, Anderson, Tomoki Awata, O'Reilly, Hitati, Kuhn, Palma, and Kyogo. On the bench was Sinisalo, young Toby, young Josh Clark, Taylor, Lagerbielke, Yang, Ohm, Kobayashi, Kwon, Lowell, McGregor, Murray, Forrest, Didi, Ralston, young Turnley, and Mikey Johnston. That's how we started that first game. Now, we never looked much into it, but when it came around the second game, you're thinking, hopefully Celtic might get those players in. And before I talk about the second game, let's listen to the interview that Brendan Rodgers gave on the 5th of July. On the 5th of July, before we went to America. So that was 20 days ago.
A bid put in, has that bid been knocked back?
Well, listen, as soon as any players come in, you guys will be the first to know about it. Until then, we're just a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Players targeted, clear over the obviously last numbers of months. So.
Right, listen to that sentence. Players targeted over the last number of months. This was on the 5th of July. So the players have been targeted for a number of months. But as it stands today, we've only got 2 players in, and that's 2 goalkeepers.
So just hopefully can get those done. But lots of time, but of course we want to get them in sooner rather than later. But it's always a two-way thing, so hopefully we can get them done in the coming weeks.
In the coming weeks. We're now 20 days later, we're almost into August, and this is why the reason I'm talking about it. It's the reality of the Celtic transfer window. A lot of people are feeling let down by Celtic, but Brendan Rodgers did say on the 5th of July.
Is there hope to get signings in before America? Would that be we've got 2 weeks there?
Is there hope to get the signings in before America, he was asked.
Yeah, well, that's the plan. I think every manager would like them in the first day, but what's most important, the players that we want are targeted. We know what we want to bring in to improve the squad, and I'm sure over the coming weeks we'll conclude the deals and like I said, get us stronger for next season.
Get us stronger over the coming weeks. Um, when you say over the coming weeks, does it mean like this month or next month? Is Brendan Rodgers being let down by the hierarchy at Celtic?
A question of patience, Brendan, because sometimes, as you say, it's a two-way street, and other clubs might have to just don't bow to your pressure and say what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we could have had 9 players in.
We could have had 9 players in by now, he says, referencing to the summer before where we had 9 players in. But if Brendan Rodgers, the important sentence that Brendan Rodgers said there was, look, we've had players targeted for a number of months now, but there seems to be no movement whatsoever with Celtic making concrete offers. There's been a concrete offer put in for Adam Ida, which was accepted over a week ago. I don't know what's holding that deal up. It was accepted. It was all over Sky that Celtic have got in Adam Ida. But he's still in Portugal. He is still in Portugal. So is it coming down to the players' wages? Surely they would have known exactly what kind of wage he was on before they put in a bid for him. And you know you're going to have to put in a bid of similar wages, if not more, than to what the player was on to get him at Celtic. Surely that can't be what's holding this deal up.
No, if we want it, but it's all about the right players that we want to improve the squad. There's no point in us doing anything other than that, and sometimes that takes a little bit of patience. And in the world nowadays, where everything's immediate, it's everyone thinks you can do it straight away, but it's not always the case. There's always a collaboration between ourselves and another club to get the players that we want. But I'm very hopeful that come the end of the window, we'll have a really strong squad and be ready and prepared for exciting season.
For an exciting season. We're 25 days after it was first speculated that we were going to go for O'Shea from Burnley, and there's still no sign of that. Although Gustav Lagerbielke, Big Knob Rocky, Nobrovsky, he got an injury, which I think that made him not go to America. We've had Stephen Welsh in the first team. But when it came to the second game, there was a little bit of light in the tunnel. Yes, it wasn't just a light. It was a massive train coming through, going choo choo. And it was Schmeichel. Yes, the thing came through the tunnel, and it was a big pair of gloves, and it was Schmeichel. And it was, and Celtic were praised, and rightly so. Rightly so for getting Schmeichel. But when it comes to outbound players, we're still left with the game against Manchester City, and this was the starting lineup. Schmeichel, fair enough, new one, and then it was Ralston, Welsh, Scales, Taylor, and then it got a bit better. McGregor, O'Reilly, Hatate, Kuhn, Maida, and Kyogo. But there's no new players in that outfield yet. Nothing that's going to make us stronger. And even the bench, when you look at the bench, there's Sinisalo. He's put Bain into third choice goalkeeper. What happens to Scott Bain now? Scott Bain's been at Celtic a lot of years. Surely Scott Bain, I mean, he was happy, always happy in the knowledge that he would be sitting on the bench every week. Should Scott Bain now ask for a move, a bit like what Todd Cantwell has done at Rangers? Should Scott Bain move on? Because it can't be much. Scott Bain's at the age of his career where you want to be playing football. I mean, Scott Bain's won a tremendous amount of medals at his time at Celtic, and he's played very rarely. In fact, the only season that he did play a lot of football, we lost the league. Yes, remember that. 2020-21 season, Bain was in goal for the majority of it. We lost the league. Scott Bain, don't even know where to go with that. Lagerbielke was on the bench. Palmer was on the bench. Yang was on the bench. Ohm was on the bench. Kobayashi was on the bench. Kwon was on the bench. Tomoki Awasa, Anderson, Lowell, Murray, Forrest, Didi, Donovan, Turley, and Mikey Johnson. A lot of younger players, but it still looks like an Ange Postecoglou team. It still looks like an Ange Postecoglou team. No matter which way you look at it, it still looks like Ange's team, apart from the goalkeeper. And I think that must be disappointing for Brendan Rodgers. He's not getting to put his own stamp on this team yet. He did bring in Kuhn, to be fair. He did bring in Kuhn. But that is it. That is it. That's the only player that he's brought in, and apart from Schmeichel and Sinisalo. Surely the board must feel that they need to act, or are they just playing a waiting game? And it was interesting that even though we knew, well, that conversation that we had with Brendan Rodgers back on the 5th of July, this interview,
it became obvious towards the end of Adam's time at the club last year that there was a real desire on his part to come back if a deal could be made possible. Given that Norwich are under a new manager since then, has that changed anything? Or, is there still a desire there on his part, as far as you're aware, to come back?
Well, listen, Adam's a Norwich player, so I'm not in the mood to be talking about other players at other clubs. But he's a player that came in here, did exceptionally well, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. That was 20 odd days ago, and still nothing's happened on that front. Yet the speculation around Matt O'Reilly, and there's been concrete offers put in for Matt O'Reilly since the beginning of the month, but there seems to be no concrete offers or alleged concrete offers put in by Celtic. Now, just a few days ago, yesterday in fact, Brendan Rodgers wanted to make it clear to Celtic supporters that we want to improve, to get better. We don't want to stand still. And by the end of the window, he's now pushed it forward, because 20 days ago, he was talking about, I want to get the players in before America. He was asked 2 weeks before America, do you want to get the players in? Yes, I'd love to get the players in. I want to be better going to America. I want to get a good pre-season. And then just yesterday, he's now talking about the fact that, yeah, we've got until the end of the window.
With Michael and Chris today. So we know the targets that we want to bring in. There's still a long way to go in the window. I think my concentration is, we know what we want to do. We know the priority positions that we want to improve. Whilst the club are getting on with that, myself and the coaches were really focused on the improvement of this team, both physically, tactically, and technically. So yeah, at some point before the end of August, I would expect us to have the players that we want in.
That's changed. That's a direct change of, and I think when you look at his body language, which we're going to do, we're going to start analysing this type of thing. I think he's feeling let down by the club. Now, the last time that this happened, we all know what happened. Is Brendan Rodgers going to walk? No, he's not going to walk. But I think that the board need to get their finger out. I mean, we're sitting on a big bag of cash. And it's an old joke now. It's no longer a bag of cash. It's a vault. It's not a bag of cash. It's a vault that needs armoured guards. Armoured guards and tanks and guns came to take away our sons. Just get the rebs on, Buzz. But anyway, that was Brendan Rodgers.
There's nothing new to add. Clearly a lot of work going on behind the scenes, but until there's any confirmation on it, we will let you know. But I make it clear to the Celtic supporters, we want to improve, we want to get better. We don't just want to stand still this season. We know we want to improve the squad, and by the end of the window shutting, I would expect us to be that. But until that moment, there's a lot of great work going on here with the players. Some of the younger players are developing really, really well. The other players now are really attuned in to how we're working, and they're having a really, really good pre-season. And that's always a real good start point for the season ahead.
It's a real good start point for the season ahead. Now, we've all spoken on this channel about bringing in youth, and it's the right thing to bring in youth. But at the same time, youth isn't going to progress us in the Champions League unless they've got some experience. And we all know that we've got players that want away from the club. Gustav Lagerbielke, for one. He was told back in December he could leave. He got a club. And then at the last minute, that deal was pulled. He has travelled to America, but his game time has been far and few between. The Matt O'Reilly situation, that looks like it's only going to end one way, and that will be with Matt O'Reilly leaving Celtic. It then means that we have to get a replacement in for Matt O'Reilly. Do we have a replacement in already? No. Is Paulo Bernardo the replacement that we want for us? It looks like that's going to be the way that Celtic are going to go. Has it been a disappointing window? Yes. It's the end of July, and now we can sit at the end of the month and say, look, and well, unless Celtic come out in the next 3 or 4 days and make a couple of absolutely fantastic signings, and then this video is then non-defunct. But as it stands today, the 25th of July, it's been a long way since the end of the season. It was a long way since the end of the season. Brendan Rodgers did say in one of his earlier videos, that he knew the players that they wanted. He knew the players that they wanted, and there'd been discussions for a couple of months. And I think as Celtic supporters, it's now getting to the stage where we are just coming up for a week away before the start of the season. It's not far until the beginning of the season. Now, you can look back at the first game of last season where you had David Turnbull starting and he was fantastic. The first couple of games of the season, scored some pretty good goals, but he left the club also. As long as we win the league, we don't really care, but we all want to be better going into the Champions League. We want to be stronger going into the Champions League. We've got an opportunity to put great distance between ourselves and the club from across the road. They're struggling to get cash to finance things, and we've got an abundance of cash, and we don't seem to be wanting to widen that gap as a football team and as a club. We don't want to be we seem to be holding off. We're just seeing what they bring in so we can bring in just enough to get us over the line when it comes to the league, rather than having an opportunity to put ourselves light years ahead of them. And by I mean light years, I don't mean Buzz Lightyear. I mean actual light years in squad development, player development, the type of player that we have in, the strength of the squad, and be able to push on, not just for this season and not just for the chance of winning the treble this season, but it's to make sure that we get into the Champions League next season. That's why you have to make these important moves now and get everything in before the start of this season. This season will take care of itself, but it's the season after that we need to start worrying about, when there's no automatic Champions League qualification. Because as we know, we're never that good at trying to qualify for the Champions League. When it's handed to us on a plate, we take it. We do take it. When we've got to try and get through the rounds, we struggle. And that is why I think that this Celtic board are letting Brendan Rodgers down this transfer window so far. They have room for manoeuvre, as they say. There is still a long way to go, they will say. Well, they said that at the beginning of this month. What will be their excuses at the end of next month? And will you stand for those excuses if we do not get the players and if we are not stronger? Because as it stands just now, we are not stronger than we were last season. We are weaker. We only have one recognised striker. We had Adam Ida as a striker last season. We had O as a striker. We had Rocco Vata that was going to be a third choice striker. That's 3 strikers that we have lost this summer. We are not stronger. We are weaker. And on that note, make sure that you join me from 8 o'clock Celtic Part Time tonight, where we can talk about this and more on the Celtic, or the One Celtic Fans View Live. It will be 8 p.m. Celtic Part Time. Check that out. Join the channel. And on that note, I'll see you in the next one, where we've got to try and smile and be all happy and say yes. And we should be, because we support Glasgow Celtic, faithful through and through. And on that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans all around the world.